Swense, welcome to the chat show, Kriegsspiel Umpiring.
Thanks for having me.
It's just a pleasure to have you. You're like you're a celebrity on there. Everybody knows Swense. For gosh sake, you're very active on the in the service. We love having you in there.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So playing Kriegspiel is one thing, and then there's umpiring Kriegspiel, which is a whole different thing. And as you know, that we're talking in this umpires talking for umpires. What is it that had you leap into umpiring versus just being a super duper player? Because you're a great player as well.
Thanks. So honestly, I would say, I mean, to the extent that I'm a good player at all, it largely came really from umpiring. I think I can really, sort of mark a period of play before that and after that, and
Yeah.
where everything, basically everything I do, the way I think about it changed. But the real reason I got into umpiring was well, one, I have a bit of a RPG background, like tabletop RPGs and whatnot, and I've
Yep.
always DM'd as well as played, and so coming at it from that sort of perspective, it seemed like that was the other half of the game. The other side of it.
Yeah.
To really fully understand and appreciate it, that I had to at least try it out once, and if I hated it, then I
I think I
can't say
think
that.
there's a thing that happens for people when they're first playing RPGs and they become a DM, game master, whatever system you're playing. There's something about the enjoyment of entertaining your friends with an RPG that is almost exactly the same as being an umpire in Kriegspiel around the experience of entertaining people. And I started back when Dungeons and Dragons used to actually roll bones. There wasn't actually dice that people made. We actually rolled. Gary Gygax was still alive when I played Dungeons and Dragons, um, but I was a dungeon master for all my friends and spent
Mhm.
all week making an adventure. And then on Saturday night, we'd stay up all night playing Dungeons and Dragons and drinking soda until we saw every which way. Right. So kids don't change at all. So how did you find us?
Um, it actually goes back to RPGs again, in that
Yep.
I um, was trying to figure out. My players had gotten into this sort of broader conflict in this game that I had been running, and I was looking for rules on how to make the warfare a bit more accurate or
Yep.
realistic. And I wasn't finding a lot of resources, and then somehow I stumbled on Kriegspiel and said, "Oh, well, what's that?" And saw that it was this 18th century Prussian wargaming
Format.
format,
Yep.
19th century, sorry, and yeah, and took a look, and actually then took me a fair bit of time to then find IKS, because I found some of the some writing about it,
Yeah.
essentially, and said, "Oh, well, that sounds interesting. I'm sure that that hasn't been done any time in the last 100 years." So
Right.
little did I know.
Right. That's amazing. So you found it by going from RPGs. You wanted to research to find out a way to get RPG players to battle a little larger. You found Kriegspiel and figured out it was thinking it was some old 19th century thing, and then you found out, oh, actually, there's this crazy group that actually does it still. That's a tremendous journey, though.
Yeah, yeah, and just the amount that I've learned about history and warfare in the past year is mind-boggling. I mean, I have literally on my desk right now. I've just been you know,
Look at that. And
just
for the kids
pouring.
at home, he's holding up two incredibly thick books of Napoleonic warfare. Look out, here he comes. No, so did you have an interest in history before this, or just no?
Yeah, yeah. So in college, I had done nearly a minor in history.
Okay.
I was English and poli sci, but I'd done a lot of history courses, and I just on the side had done a lot of reading. I was always fascinated by like Central Asia,
Mhm.
sort of the intersection of like the Indian, Greek for a time, Turkic, like there's just all these cultures like mixing there,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's a really fascinating topic. But military history, particularly, I don't think had ever been something that was really on my radar per
Okay.
se. To to a great degree until like no, I played Rome Total War, and
Right.
I'd had some experiences like that, but I'd never been, I would say, a military history buff until I discovered Kriegspiel, and then decided, well, it's based on reality. If I want to get good at it, I need to start reading about reality.
Yeah.
Then, of course, when you're umpiring, there's
Right.
this pressure and this sort of rigorous self critique, at least for me, that I'm always going through, where I'm saying to myself, well, how can I make this a little better? How can I, get a little closer to, a sense of reality for the players in terms of the mechanics and
And what was your first game? You kind of burst on the scene in a very positive way. It's a compliment. You came in and you became a kind of a big deal fast in a good way. We all loved having you in. What was your first game?
um, my first game was the Battle of Dessalines, which was this a sort of American Civil. It's the what I think some people have begun calling the Swense verse. Although that
The
makes me sound
Swensiverse. Right.
like I'm Marvel or something, but like
Well,
no, the it's basically this.
it might be that you're the Stan Lee of Kriegspiel, right?
Yeah, it's this red versus blue
Someday
concept.
we're all going to write you into our scenarios. There's Swents in the corner.
Oh my god, yeah. I think James is actually running a game very soon, which I will be participating in, which is about me trying to umpire while my cat tries to stop me from umpiring.
I think that
Um,
right there. There's
he's
tension, there's
if
conflict,
the
and there's your
audio,
cat.
if
For
only
the
in the
kids at
audio.
home, there's the cat trying to stop him from being on a podcast. I love that. So, in the Swensiverse was an alternative history American Civil War period.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but because the maps that I found that I was really enamored with were of Haiti, um,
Yeah,
I really thought they were unique because it was a different sort of biomes, different terrain than we usually see in a lot of the sort of standard European or American conflicts.
yep.
More so in America, but
I
uh,
remember the Haiti maps.
sorry, what did you
You
say?
were putting them in the map design piece, if I remember correctly. But anyway, it's a while ago. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
it's so interesting that like many of us start in that similar kind of let's take the American Civil War, then make an alternative history. I did the same thing in my first game.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think back then, particularly, I was nervous about doing something historical and
Yeah,
getting a detail wrong, getting a fact wrong. So it felt safer to do like, well, I mean, there was no background at this point at all. It was basically just these guys are red, they are
right,
monarchists. These guys are blue,
right.
they are Republicans.
Well,
And
when I first came into the IKS, there were so many people who knew so much about history. I just remember Chief like going on about these different details of different Napoleonic periodal things, and then Blazer Trail was in talking about these incredible details. I said, "Man, if I do anything that's even remotely historic, one of these people is going to call me out." So I'm not going near it.
and I knowing what I know now, I think I would have been a lot less scared of that. I think there's
Right,
really no harm in just trying. I've played
right.
in plenty of historical games where maybe something kind of weird happens, and I don't throw up my hands and say, "Oh my God,
Oh my goodness.
don't you know that was actually so and so who was the general at that battle?" That's totally
Right.
no.
Umpire discretion there, player.
Yeah,
So
we're
what
here
is
to have fun. We're not
the
here to be pedantic, and I don't think most people in the community even would say anything.
right,
Except
right.
maybe just
No,
spread.
no, most people don't. They just play,
But
right?
at the time, it was one of those things that was like, oh man, like I should do something fake.
Yeah, that's great. And then where did you go from there? So you started with that Haiti based alternative history. Then what was your next project?
Oh man, there have been so many. I
Sure.
stayed in Haiti for about 3 or 4 games and just did
Okay.
kind of continuations from that same war, and that's how the whole storyline built up. That has people coming back and have built the people who do repeatedly come back and get to play the same characters because one of the things I did was I gave everyone a fake character. Their names were all just European soccer players with their names mixed up.
Right.
Um, and so
Right.
we had like Andres Iniesta or something, but
Yeah.
it
Messi,
was all
Lionel, Lionel.
it was all very silly. But then everyone stuck with it. Like like, so like if when James came back, I was like, well, you can be Marshall Vertu again.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
How did you keep so the problem I ran into was that players had players ambitions, so they didn't want to so the idea of Dungeons and Dragons is you have a group and the main fiction is that the group stays together and adventures together. It doesn't make sense you get together to play Dungeons and Dragons and everyone wants to go in different directions. My players just couldn't kind of get that and they kept wanting to go off in 15 directions. So one guy wanted to go to Maryland, one guy wanted to go to Kansas, another guy wanted to go to Florida, and I just the whole thing kind of fell apart because everyone wanted their different games. How did you keep from having that happen in your little campaign there?
so I mean, the main way I did it was I treated it like it was history, like, you
Okay,
know, in the sense that, well, now so and so, was promoted up. Now they're this divisional commander, but like you didn't get as much agency. And over time, I took player notes and stuff, and at this point, I think players have a lot more control. But when I was starting out, particularly, I I think what I was trying to do less than give players a character to really inhabit was giving them the sense that there is a history here and that these
got it.
are people who like
Wisely done. Yeah. So the character was taking part in that history versus making the history. Got it. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
And that balancing act, I think, especially early on, I would not have been able to manage that like an RPG with 20,
yeah.
30 people. So I really had to, kind of know my limits and say, well, I love that you have these like character ideas and beats, but like at the end of the day, like I will incorporate the ones I can, but like
Yeah.
the story is sort of an on the rails story of
Yeah.
different battles that I
Which
just,
is what you do in most role playing games is the story's on rails and then you get to maneuver within, which is the mistake I made. I didn't put rails and off they went. So
yeah.
what in the whole process, because you're not only are you an umpire, not only do you play, you also give a lot of great advice in the channels. Research, getting the game together, after action review. What is it that really is your favorite part of the whole umpiring process?
Absolutely the planning. Um,
Planning. Okay.
as an umpire, seeing the planning, I think my favorite part of any game is when you get two really active, lively planning discussions happening with the problem that you've created, and especially
Yeah.
because I do tend to run. I've run some historical games, but I would say at least 2/3 of my games are generally fictional scenarios.
Hmm.
I am kind of creating a problem, and a problem that I don't even necessarily, I certainly don't have the best solution to. I mean,
Right.
like it's a problem that it's sort of a little different, I think, because you have problems, and in general, there's at least an answer that Moltke says that, or that, and I think
Right.
that you know that's really cool. But I also really love just getting to see like let's crowdsource this, and you've done
Yeah.
that as
Right.
well, which I really enjoy at the end of every problem when we all get together and talk through what do we think the best solution to this Moltke problem is. And in the same way, I just that's why I love the planning is it's getting to see people interact like at a very fundamental level with the situation you've set
It
up.
really is the puzzle solving step of the process, right? Everybody's trying to figure out the puzzle basically of how to approach the problem. I think it's great. I do. I also love that as well. Yeah. And then when you play, how do you handle planning when you're a player?
Um, so I'll say that I've really kind of come around to the that sort of tripartite breakdown into what are our objectives, what's the enemy's objectives, what's the most dangerous thing the enemy could do. Those kind of breakdowns
Hmm.
of assigning out tasks. But I think in general, my sort of philosophy of planning, besides I'd like to get everyone involved in that, and I love that framework for getting people involved. But my once I kind of get some early input, I love to just kind of make a simple framework like I think we should go along these paths
Hmm.
this way, kind of lay out that very like simple framework, and then discuss the nuances of that framework. And actually, for a great example of, I think, a planning done well for those who want to spectate, the like a planning that like was very much how I like to plan the new player umpiring game that you and I are in
Mm-hmm.
together. Was a perfect. I just kind of when I first see the problem, I kind of shout the first thing I think.
Yep.
Then you kind of came in, refined my idea, and then I put it together as one final project, and that's kind of my ideal planning scenario, I think.
Yeah, that's right. You said, okay, we're going to go to the right. Okay, good. Now let's look at the entire problem from that because we've eliminated 15 other potentials. I think that's right. That's it. And it's a remarkable how the ability to do that is propagating inside the community. You see more and more of that kind of approach versus other less efficient approaches. Yeah. What's your
Yeah, yeah. It is. That's
yeah
one of the coolest things about being in a community like this is you get to see, ideas can propagate and diffuse, and
yeah
just by talking to people, you can kind of, just by scrolling, you can kind of learn. Oh well, I never considered, employing cavalry in that way, or something like that.
absolutely? It is amazing to make a scenario and then watch people really put their brain power into it. I'm always absolutely I don't know how to even describe the feeling of it. It's almost like you throw a party and lots of people coming and having a good time. You're kind of overwhelmed that you pulled it off.
Yeah, absolutely.
um,
Yeah, I know that.
which period is the most interesting to you now that you've had a chance to sample a bunch?
Um, I so I really want to get more into ancients. I've done a
Ancient.
lot of research and reading. Trying to start working up kind of a theory of how I think ancient combat should look, because that's the thing we don't really know as much about.
Right.
Than say Napoleonic or American Civil War. But my baby will always be the like 1870s,
Hmm.
roughly the early breech loaders before smokeless powder, Franco-Prussian War, that kind of
Yep.
uh, era is still my favorite. Just something about the that like uncanny valley between Napoleon and and World War I. It's you've got
So much
it,
was changing in that period.
yeah, exactly. It's like everything's in flux, nothing's set yet, and we just don't. We're almost kind of theorizing how warfare is going to look, and then we put it into
Yeah,
practice.
yeah. I think and that is what draws me to that period as well. The European side of it rather than the American Civil War. Although I think there have been and I know there have been some tremendous ancients games, and I think there's so much nuance in what ancients can be because you get even within the ancient world, there's all these little techniques and subtleties that Hollywood doesn't let us really think about because it all looks the same. But in fact, how you deployed your, close order, skirmishing, cavalry, all that stuff, all contributed to a very nuanced way of making war back then. So certainly a rich area for research in gaming.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And one thing that actually draws me to it as well is I think there's a almost a greater degree of, not almost, there is a greater degree of inflexibility in most ancient armies and most pre-modern armies
Hmm.
compared to as the science of making war, the art of making war continually advances over time. um, Things just get more flexible, where like in ancient periods there's so much more of that sort of early planning, because you basically have to decide how you're going to line up at the beginning of the day, and that's more or less going to be a formation that you're
Yeah.
sticking with for the rest of
Yep.
the battle. You have to make these kind of calculations based on what you know about your opponent, based on what you know about the composition of their forces, and then you basically have to lock into that choice. You don't get to in a something like in the post linear impulse era of warfare. There's, I
Right.
think, a little bit more flexibility in terms of oh well, this was a misstep. Let me pull back. Let me pull this division back, and let me sort of
Yeah. Right. There was
communicate
no
what we
pulling a
need to see.
Roman legion back when
No,
you sent it. it went right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it certainly isn't. It's certainly not going to wheel 45 degrees
Right,
or refuse half of its centuries and then
right,
fire by rank. No,
right.
it's
No matter
it's
what
a
Rome
massive
Total War tells
flight.
you. So, uh, so talk about your philosophy of combat systems. I know that if you were to go to the rule sets string of the Empire area in IKS, good gravy, you would find a lot of different approaches. How do you think about resolving combat?
So, basically, I think a lot about what I think would happen in a given engagement. I try to look at about an engagement.
Hmm.
I don't. It's hard to even say, but like I look at it first at like the engagement level, if that makes sense. The
Hmm.
totality of the fight that is happening, and I think about how I expect that to go in a sort of broad way. Then I
Hmm.
look down at the nuances of it. And then as I'm resolving those smaller, more nuanced engagements, I roll 2d6, and if it is low, that favors the bigger side, and if it's high,
Okay.
that favors the smaller side.
So in
Uh,
spirit, you're aligned with the ruse 2d6 approach. Yeah.
pretty much have embraced the ruse 2d6 approach these days.
He'll be
That is,
pleased to hear it. He sits in this tower in his castle alone with nothing but a single landline phone. He's a strange character, Ruse, and so he'll be so delighted when he hears it. But of course, we have to send it by a carrier pigeon to him because the phone doesn't actually work. It's a strange thing. But anyway, he'll be delighted to hear
no, yeah, the voice over carrier pigeon form of
it.
I'm well familiar.
So that's great. So that and that puts a more. Well, let me ask you this: how do you improve your fingertip feel for what you expect to happen?
um, honestly, there's just no substitute for reading. Trying to, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've just like found some old some I found some book on warfare and I'm just kind of
Mhm.
thumbing through. Okay, artillery, artillery, artillery. Let me see if there's a good example here or
Yeah.
a good anecdote or something like that. But um,
Yep.
other than that, I think there's the more I've done it, like any skill, it just gets easier and easier as you start kind of getting a feel for
Yeah. Right. After
the
you've resolved 100 of this situation, 100 of 50, 20, whatever, and then the players all accept it and say that's a reasonable outcome, then your confidence grows and says, okay, I kind of know what that looks like.
yeah. When I first made the jump, well, actually, what I did was I had started. I started out with the James 1d6 system,
Yeah.
which
As did I.
is a great system for starting out because it intuitively makes sense. It's laid out in a way where you're just like, yeah, okay, this makes sense. I can do this. And then over time, as I wanted to refine it and make it more my own, and I wanted to curve, so I wanted to go to 2d6, and so I was just making all these incremental changes to the way that I ran James
Right.
1d6 to the point that it was clearly Swense 2d6, and it was. And then at one point, I saw Ruse posted a PowerPoint
Yep. Yep.
that laid out his approach, and I said, "Okay, that's I'm already like I've already twisted this thing so far around itself in knots that I might as well to create the Swense system, which wasn't even a system; it was just me thinking through the problem basically
Yeah.
already. But
Right.
when I saw Ruse had essentially systematized it to a greater or lesser degree, I said, "Yeah, this is what is going to be my little Bible, so to speak. Now I'm going to kind of push away all the like accretion of rules that I've built up in
Right.
an unsystematized way in my head, and do something a little more straightforward."
Well, I think
And
there's two. I had a very different journey, but landed in the same place. I went the absolute wrong direction down this role of statistics and all that stuff, and then Ruse and I had a great discussion over DM, and he pointed out the virtues of that system. So, and I'm a convert, and I use his system as well. I think there's kind of two approaches there. that might appeal to different types of personalities. So if you're a math head and you love mathematics head and you love kind of statistics and bell curves and all that, you might be more attracted to a system that uses die rolls and tables and things to come up with some sort of solution. If you're a lover of history, the Roos 2D6 system is brilliant because the more you read, the better you get. So
Yeah.
it literally gives you an incentive to do what you love to do. So if you like equations, one direction's fine. If you like actually just reading stories from history, off you go, right?
I hope you interview 60 at some point, the new Master Umpire 60, because he and
Yeah,
I have, I think, the most diametrically opposed. I've seen his resolution system, and
I think I have too. Yes.
I wouldn't even know where to begin writing something like that. That terrifies me on an instinctual level.
Uh, God
I
bless, right?
look. I could have become an engineer. And my father was an engineer. He very much wanted me to be an engineer.
Right.
And I looked at math once, and it terrified me. And ever since then, I knew I was going to be a lawyer.
Right. You're a man of words, and so it's natural you want to read the anecdotes. Um, that's great. So we have a similar approach to that, which there's lots of approaches. But the point is, if you want to become a mathematician and do lots of tables, that's fine too. You're coming to a delivering a resolution to players that makes sense, right? So it's just a matter of
Yeah.
what you enjoy doing. I'm sure if someone was completely math oriented, making them read stories, they'd be, their skin would crawl, right? Because that's just not interesting to them.
Yeah.
How do
Although, I
you?
mean,
Yeah.
at some you have to read some level of stories, I think, to have any.
Well, I
And
mean,
all credit to 60. Those are some incredibly detailed reports. I think far more detailed than mine. So he definitely has a way
absolutely
with
right.
words as well.
Absolutely.
Um, I'm
You
just
have to
I'm
be a bit of a writer to be an umpire.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, and that it's a it's an often very repetitive form of writing. In so much as you're always in the same mode or style. But
Yeah.
what's nice is that it again you can have kind of fun with it. By the more you read, the more you can kind of get the period accurate terminology down, and that's something I've been meaning to get more into is not trying to convey things more in the terminology that like a report would have been conveyed in at the time, because I
Yeah.
just for a little bit more realism.
Yeah. Just a little
That would be
flavor
enough.
rather than not. What's a size game that you love? Like number of players, number of commands, even number of umpires. What's your favorite format and size?
I think I would say about 10 on each side
And
is
on each side.
probably roughly where for like a proper game, not for a staff game or anything, for like a
Yeah.
normal, I guess, sort of tactical sized Kriegspiel that would fill out a decent.
And in terms of live games or play by post, how do your games break down?
Oh,
All
I'm almost exclusive. I've done one live game once by myself,
okay.
or like as lead umpire,
Yeah.
and it
Right.
was actually by myself as well. And I've assisted with many for James and
Yeah.
for other.
Right. I think you were in these Thursday sessions for a while, if I recall correctly. Right.
Yeah, yeah, but I just do not. I personally do not enjoy. I like to be able to sit back and think about, really, think about my turns,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
on both sides of the equation, I like to sit back and think about my turns, whether I'm umpiring or playing.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that quiet moment to myself. And in a live game, it's with the time pressure. There's not really that opportunity. You're making more of snap decisions, which is interesting in its own right, but it's kind of like speed chess. It's less my thing.
Right. Very different. The time pressure creates a different experience, really, right?
Yeah.
For both the umpire and for the player. So I'll play by post around 20 players, 10 per side. Um, what are some aspirational projects you got going on? Which direction are you going to take it?
Um, well, I've been meaning to get into, and this is a little scary for me because I just mentioned I hate math, but I've been meaning to get into mobilization timetables at some
Really?
point and do something with a real focus on that, again, like mid to late 19th century mobilization of armies, like two sides trying to just figure
Hmm.
out when the trains need to run and to get the ammo and the supplies and the men and the reserves that are coming in, and then thinking about those kind of operational challenges in waiting for the reserves to get to the front,
Yeah.
and how do you sort of time their arrivals to make the best impact on your plans. I think that could be really cool. That's been something I've been thinking about a lot. And then my other big project that I've been thinking of is I want to start running kind of small, quick 5-turn ancients battles.
Oh yeah.
That would be just like take a famous battle from, I don't know, the Punic Wars or something. Set up a staff of maybe 5 people to a team. Do if there was enough interest, do it even like the earlier multi problems where you had the multiple teams
Right.
all solving the problem, and then just do something like that, very much inspired by what you've been doing, and just do that as one of those maybe every every 2 months or so, and
I
that
think
would be a
that's great.
lower time pressure project that I think I would enjoy doing.
That's cool. I think one of the things that would be interesting about that is learning all of the different types of units, because we obviously know the Roman legionary and we know the hoplites. Everybody who went to grammar school kind of gets those two things, but there were so many different types of auxiliaries and mercenaries and allies, and different types of slingers and archers and all kinds of stuff. I think it'd be very interesting to be able to sample some of the different styles, but in the shorter games, because you just kind of get a tasting of what the problem was of having a whole group of archers, for example, who had to dismount. I'm just making that up, right? That's neat.
Yeah, and yeah, you would have that sort of pedagogical element where you can kind of show just, hey, um, you know, this is how a successor army, should best have worked. This is its sort of combined arms model. We've got the cavalry going through the middle, which is unintuitive to most players. You
Right,
rarely
right,
see that, even in the ancients games we've had. The idea that actually the cavalry of the in a successor army is the decisive arm. It's usually unless it's fighting another phalanx, it's usually going to go through the center, not around the flanks. At
hmm,
least it'll try to go through the center, which is sort of unintuitive, very different than what you expect.
right,
And there's all
right.
these little things like that that would be fun to show them off in one battle, and then by the next battle, and with this lower time commitment, you get to play a bunch of different scenarios. You see different elements each time, but then you also see recurring familiar ones, and you can say, "Oh yeah, now I kind of remember how that's supposed to work," and in that way, we can all kind of get a little
Here,
better
here was
at
the
control.
shift that caused that tactical change. That's
Yeah.
neat. I think that is a terrific opportunity to create some great Kriegspiels. I think I'm a fan of the shorter game because it just allows people to play more, get more reps,
Yeah.
versus a one long 3 month game, which are fine too because those are very nuanced. They have lots of detail. So that's great. I think those are both really cool directions in which to go. What So for new umpire, somebody just stumbles into this. You burst on the scene with great success. What advice would you give a new umpire coming
Um,
in on how to get started?
well, this is going to be maybe a little ironic, but I think the best thing I would say is know your limits.
Hmm.
This is definitely something that like I had to one figure out. I mean, with the amount of games that I run, everyone knows I run a ridiculous number of games at a given time. But like, it really is a trick of knowing how to do that and not let down every other commitment in your life, and that's something you
Right.
build up to. Don't you're gonna have loads of ideas, but pick one pretty easy one. Ideally, honestly, a black powder one.
Yeah.
Like do something, find something in black powder that interests you. Do that first. I think that's the nice small game, 3 to 4 players on each side. You know,
Hmm.
that's like that's pretty much the best way to start out. Like you just got to jump in, read some rule sets, and don't take on something that's crazy like right off the bat. Pick something you think you can manage, and
Yeah.
that and just take your time, do your research the first time. Don't worry about like rushing it out because or don't think about rushing it out because you're excited. Just take your time and put it together right the first time, and don't bite off more than you can chew.
Yeah. That's such
It's a
sage
really fun
advice.
hobby, but just like when you're rock climbing, they tell you like, well, don't go more than twice a week when you're starting out because you don't want to pull a tendon and then just be out for 6 months. Like, you have to learn how to manage and mitigate.
Great advice for a new umpire. Don't pull a tendon.
That too. I mean, carpal tunnel is real. It affects
Don't
millions
pull
of
it.
Americans, I
You know.
think.
And
But
if
yeah,
you're, if your family says, "Hey, we have this event," and you say, "But I have to resolve a turn," you're probably not achieving the balance that we all want to achieve. You got to go to the event.
that's yeah. If don't let it mess with your life. But more than anything, really, just like when you're starting out, like you will be less stressed and have a better time if you take on fewer players. Like,
That's a great.
I
I think that's great advice. I think the initial when you get the bug, when we all get the bug, and say, "Oh my gosh, this is a terrific format," and we just want to get involved. The first impulse is just dive in, and that's very natural. I think we all experience it, and so not pulling a tendon means you just pace yourself a bit, because you'll find one part of the process that is confusing. So some people naturally make maps like they're just so easy to do, or naturally just spit out OOBs, the orders of battle like they're nothing. But there's going to be some part of that process that you're going to have to spend some time with to get good at. So,
something's gonna be unfamiliar.
so what technologies do you use for maps? What's your philosophy of approach for making maps? Speaking of maps,
Oh, I really don't make maps. I've bought one from Wolfton,
okay,
but other than that, I just use free maps online from the
okay.
Library of Congress.
So you're a use them right off, pull them right off the internet guy. Okay.
Yep, I most of my maps are old,
Yeah.
like 1940s U.S. Army surveys of different areas,
Yeah.
um,
There you go.
that just have basic geography, the topography, uh, foliage.
If people know where the hill is, they know where the bush is. They should be able to do okay, right from there.
That's my that's my philosophy. And when from time to time, I've dug deep into, like, I'm doing a Fenian invasion game of Canada, where we had to dig into some old Canadian public records,
Yeah.
to find some maps, which that was kind of fun. But yeah, in general, I've become a real devotee of take an obscure country and use its maps, or like a country you wouldn't think about. Like, go to Brunei or
Hmm.
Singapore or something. Use one of their maps. Why not? Like, it's new, it's
Yeah.
different. Like, try just look around some countries with interesting topography.
I think that's right. Because you're driving decisions, and so in fact, I've kind of reached this point myself where having a historically accurate map, and then you have to disguise this because people will use the historically accurate map to backward engineer it from Wikipedia. Is like the whole process. You can just throw it out and just get a topographically interesting situation and play a game on it, right? The same
Yeah.
way. So I think I've reached a point in my own umpiring where I will probably stop using historical stuff because it just eliminates the whole thing. And if you just create like your Haiti map and just say, hey, use the principles. But that's good advice. You mentioned you run a lot of games. How many games at a time do you think you have going on?
5. I never have more than
Five
5.
games going on at a time. And here we are giving advice to young umpire or new umpires to not overdo it. So 5 games at a time. And how do you keep that organized in terms of on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, well, what I try to do is I usually resolve about one a day. So I'm usually doing
Hmm?
like one resolution, I would say, every day, for a different game. And then I'll take 2 to 3 days off in a given. I'm not usually running 5,
Yeah,
and one of those that I'm
5
saying,
projects are going on.
one of those is a couple of those have multiple umpires, which is nice too. So I'm not
Yeah.
running a turn every time, but yeah, five's a lot.
What? How long are your resolutions generally in terms of your 20 players? If that's your target.
Um, I would say moving the pieces around and doing all the like resolutions probably about 2 hours, and then
2
I would
hours.
say I can usually crank out all the reports in another hour or so for one of the bigger ones. But most of my games, I have two big games that I'm running right now, but uh, I have a staff game as well, which that one I can get done in about 15.
Yeah. Right.
That's nice. I like that one. Two screenshots.
And so, oh, I get you two staffs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so 5 at a time. What periods generally are they all over the place, or like the ones you're
Yeah,
working on
yeah.
now?
I've got one. I've got the Fenian Raid, which is, I guess
Yeah.
you'd call it American Civil War. It sort of doesn't fit any category
Right.
correctly, but and then one 1870s esque game. I've
Hmm.
got one Napoleonic, uh, and I've got one
Yeah.
shrimp,
Amazing.
and then the new player game. Yeah, the shrimp one. I'm not even going to
The
try to explain
shrimp.
that because yours are going to
You're
believe
the shrimp guy.
I, I am one of the shrimp people.
Just
I,
where,
I I'm sorry. I don't
where
know
did
what I
that come
started. I
from? The
didn't mean for it
shrimp
to take
game.
off.
That's funny. What can we do to support active umpires that would be like a nice addition to the way we run things? What are your thoughts? Just brainstorming with you.
Oh, like support as in
Just to
like.
make it like so, being an umpire in and of itself is a lot of fun.
Mhm.
I think the map design channel is absolutely amazing. Everything I learned about map alteration, I learned from Damon and the people in that channel. That's a terrific support because you go in there and say, "Hey, what do you think of this color or that color?" And people come back with great feedback. So that's a tremendous thing. Is there anything else we could do to make being an active umpire in the IKS more fun or more interesting?
Um, I would I would love like a newsletter of like, I don't even know how you would do it, but I
Sure.
could just imagine something that's just like, hey, this month in IKS, like so and so did so and so. You could kind of do
Yeah.
like Swense got outflanked yesterday. Like
Yeah. Again. Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Not again. Sweat's got outflanked
constantly
once
flanked.
more.
Yeah, well, it's because I never flanked myself. I always just say, man, just charge straight
Right.
forwards. Um,
I
one of
like
my
that idea. I like the idea of I'm always a little overwhelmed when I go in a game and there's so much in there. And what I really want to do is just what's going on, what are the highlights, and not like a reel from Facebook, but just like what's going on and what's interesting here, and look at what Swense is dealing with here, or look at what Tomas has done with this resolution or whatever. I like that idea.
even just a cool screenshots from past games, like
Yeah,
poster board kind of thing that just is like, hey, like look at some of these cool battles that have happened. Like look at this innovative tactic.
yeah,
Or
yeah. I think it's a great idea. Right? You get a sense of contributing to a larger group of games versus sitting there by yourself, kind of banging through stuff. I think it's a good idea. I made a note of that. That's awesome.
yeah, it's I mean one of my favorite things is I'm always realizing that there are like just games that I did not know existed. When somebody will post, hey, is so and so's game or whatever, or does anyone have a link to so and so's game, and then I learn about a whole new game that I didn't even know was happening, and that's always a really cool experience.
Well, the experience, the experiment of active umpires, and what this podcast or chat show is about is just literally saying, what do we really have? And it's astonishing. We have 79 active umpires at the moment. I'm sure there are others that we don't have yet to track down. We've got an equal number of active games, and I only think I have you down for one. So there's probably four others that aren't even on the list yet. So we probably have around 80 to 85 active games, each of which has 20 players in it, and you can do the math there. I mean, that's a lot of activity that when you're
Yeah,
running your own little game, you feel like, oh, I'm just entertaining 20 people. Goodness gracious. But there's a huge amount of activity and a lot of variety in that as well. So
Yeah, and if you're Desert Fox, you're in all 87 of those
well, I
games.
suspect actually there's 80 active umpires and there's actually only 20 players and they're in all the games, right? So like Desert Fox is basically in all the games and Chief and all these characters are in there, right?
Yeah,
We're gonna find out that like there's more umpires than actual players.
well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely there's definitely a lot of overlap in those categories between umpires and players. I don't
It is
know.
alarming, right? You go into other games, you're like, wait a minute, those are the exact same people that are in my game. How are they playing both games? But of course, it's 15 minutes at a turn, so that's funny.
Oh yeah, or all the new guys who love them for this. Were like, hey, can I be in this one too? I'm like, no,
Yeah,
this is not the point. I'm sorry. I wish you could.
yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, I wish you could be in this game and the identical game that was also happening on the identical server. But no.
I like it. That's just the enthusiasm of people who find the format. So,
Yeah, no,
Swense,
I love
terrific conversation. Thank you so much for joining. You're a notable, and we love all the stuff you put in the server and the great games you put in there. And I'm sure everyone's going to be really excited to hear this conversation.
it. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on.